Hey, family, it's your sister Jocelyn here, and welcome to another episode of Faith on the Journey. If this is your first time tuning in, we welcome you. We are so glad that you are here and want you to know that we're committed to helping you strengthen your faith, heal your heart, and discover a sense of community. And we do so through a variety of ways by connecting you with a team of Christian counselors and offering trauma healing trainings across the country. You can learn about these resources and so much more by visiting our website at faithonthejourney.org. Again, that is faithonthejourney.org. Now, today we're welcoming to the show a woman of God named Madison, who is a faith, mental health, and addiction speaker. She also is a podcaster and a new author. Go, Madison. She published her first book, It's Only Embarrassing If You're Embarrassed. And I love that title. So I can't wait to talk to her, hear her testimony, and introduce her to you. So, welcome to the show, Madison.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here. Big fan of the show, and really, I just love the work you do and everything you stand for.
Thank you. Thank you, Madison. I'm really excited to have you here. The topic just kind of jumped out at me, the title. It means something because I know many of us struggle with embarrassment. And so we're going to get into that in a moment. But first, I want our audience to learn more about you and your story. So let's kind of talk about your testimony.
Absolutely, yeah. So I grew up in church. I did not have a good relationship with God when I was younger. About 15, 16, I started drinking, trying drugs, all the things, and really went down, a pretty bad path. And by the time I was probably, 18, 19, 20, I unknowingly by that point had become really addicted and really dependent upon alcohol. And I went to East Carolina, which was a party school. So there was an opportunity to drink or do drugs every day of the week. And I really got caught up in that lifestyle. And at this point, I did not have any faith. I had completely turned my back on God. I was living a really unmanageable, really just dysfunctional life. I ended up getting married very early and then really just living in this lifestyle of just addiction and partying and just, everything that's kind of the opposite of what I would want God to, be and show up and do in my life. I'm sure he's just looking down like, please stop, it's so bad. Then in 2020 everything kind of came to a head, and so my father actually passed away from COVID, and
Mm.
I actually was the one in the family who had gotten COVID. And so my father ends up passing away from COVID, and I feel like it's my fault that he's dead. And so I immediately just, am overcome with just this guilt and shame and pain, and I don't know what to do about it. So I drink, and that doesn't work. So I try drugs, and those don't work. So I try more drugs, and then I drink and do drugs, and that doesn't work. And, I lived like that for about 2 years. And one day I wake up a little bit before I turned 30 and was like, I think that I'm addicted to alcohol and drugs because I've been doing them every single day for, multiple years now. My life is really unmanageable, really dysfunctional, and like I have to do something different. So I have this realization, and I'd had a couple kind of pivotal moments where things had happened where I was like, oh, maybe I'm an alcoholic. Maybe, I'm the problem. But there's so much shame that comes around admitting that, acknowledging that, even to yourself, that it's so quick to just dismiss those thoughts. So at this point where I realize, I've got a bit of a problem, I'm about to go on vacation. And one thing about me is I love to do drugs and drink even more on vacation when I was in, this really unmanageable lifestyle. So I decide I'm going to go on vacation, I'm going to get really drunk, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to quit. So I do that. And I, again, because I was not ready to acknowledge that I was addicted to alcohol and drugs, I come back, I quit. I have the worst withdrawals ever. And I give everything a try, like everything but faith at this point. I give a try. I give therapy a try. I'm speed dating psychiatrists. I'm lying to them about my addiction because I'm ashamed of it. So I'm not really getting the help I need. And it's just this cycle where now I've given up addiction and my life is worse. And I'm mad now because I did, I thought God had kind of, reappeared and, kind of told me, hey, you need to give up these things, you need to start living for me. And I thought I was doing that and things were not getting better. And I realized it was because I wasn't living for God. I was living for what I wanted God to be, which was I wanted to come up with my own worldly plan, have Him show up and deliver on that plan for me because I thought I knew what was best. And then when that didn't, I was like, hey, God, what the heck? So things do not start to click for me until about 3, 4 months after I quit drinking. And at this point, I give AA a try. And if you are unsure how bad my drinking problem was, I started going to AA on a Wednesday, just like a random Wednesday, not a holiday, not a weekend, just a Wednesday. And I go into AA and I realize that it's the one of the first places I've ever been where I can relate to every single person that's there. Every single person there, we're all connected by this weird challenge that is addiction, but we're all there because we want our lives to be better and to be different. And I realized the thing that these people have that I don't have is faith. That's it. That's the only thing that separates me from these people that are truly living their best life post addiction. And, a lot of the steps of AA focus on fully turning your life over to God and, really allowing your higher power to fully take over. And this was so hard for me because at this point, I'd been blaming God because I wasn't ready to acknowledge that I was the problem in a lot of the scenarios. I was like, oh, my life's like this because of God. If God was real, God would have made my life different. God would have made my life better. If God was real, my life would be perfect. All these lies we tell ourselves because we don't want to take accountability for the decisions and actions we've made. And so I end up in, just this time of being in AA and realizing like, okay, if I want to get serious about this, I've tried everything. I've tried alcohol, drugs, therapy, psychiatrist, I've tried all of it. How about God? So I finally do. I'm like, hey, God, I know I've been like lying to you, saying, like, yeah, I give my life to you, but I don't really mean it. But now I mean it. And now I want that life and I want what these people in AA have. And I want to be able to be the person who is able to stay recovered and says that they're able to do it, because of and through you and what you've done in my life. So I just have this really, kind of real candid moment of realizing, like, oh, if I really want this, I got to go all in with God and I got to mean it this time. So I do. My life starts to radically change for the better. I mean, I finally start to trust people again. I start to build good relationships. I start to get good relationships. God starts to put the right people in my life. God gives me the resources that I need to deal with the anxiety and the depression that I was trying to suppress by using alcohol and drugs. Like, God gave it all to me and fixed it all for me. It didn't happen overnight. It took a long time. I wanted it to happen overnight, but it did happen. And it's so funny because I remember like just going through it and just trying the healing thing and being like, God, I'm going to give it to you again today. And it felt like the 775th time that I had said that. But the reality is, things were so much different. And God was just changing me right before my eyes. A huge thing for me was anger, resentment. I was a very angry, like I was like stereotypical mean girl. Like if you said something mean to me, I was going to say something 6 times meaner back to you. I had so much anger, resentment. I held grudges. I had all these things that we call in AA character defects, all these things that are holding on to that are worldly things. And, a lot of it was me giving God those things because at the end of the day, we're so quick to be like, yeah, give me a pill for anxiety, but are you actually fixing it? Are you actually the root of what's causing that? And are you actually giving those things over to God? Because if not, you can take all the pills you want, it's not going to work. So that is a little kind of Cliff Notes version of the past couple years of my life, the good, the bad, the in between. And I can honestly say that the only reason that I am sitting here talking to you today is because of God. Because if not, I would be drunk in a ditch somewhere for sure. And that's something I'm really grateful for today.
Amen. Oh, thank you, Madison. I'm so grateful too that you are here. And I know that literally is just the Cliff Note version, but in seeing what God has done in your life, you've actually transitioned into doing work now for the kingdom on a massive scale with your new book. And so I want to talk about that. What inspired you to write this book and the title? What made you land on this title?
So the title, it's only embarrassing if you're embarrassed. Whenever I was going through these things in my life, I felt so much embarrassment, shame, guilt, pain around these things because I thought I was the only one. I thought I was the only one out here that was struggling with all of these things. And I was really embarrassed by that because I thought I was just this anxious, depressed alcoholic out here, just the only one that was like that. Nobody could relate, nobody could understand. And then once I realized that's not the case at all, there are a lot of people out there that struggle with mental illness, addiction, all these different things that I struggled with. And the book, I originally did not set out to write a book. I originally set out to write a diary, which tells you how insightful the book is. So about 30 years old, decide like, hey, I've got all of this anger and pain and shame and guilt and just things inside of me now that I'm sober. Because before all those things they came up, I would drink or do a drug to suppress them. Now I'm sober and now I have to deal with all these things and I don't know how. So one day I'm like, okay, you know what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start a Word doc and I'm just going to brain dump everything. I'm going to unpack every single hard, uncomfortable, challenging thing I've been through over the past couple years, and I'm just going to just get it all out there. So that's what I do. And then I go back and I read it, and I'm like, this is kind of funny. The like humor that I have behind writing about some of these things. I'm like, huh, like odd that this like kind of turned out good. So I sit on this for, probably 6 months, a year, and I keep getting like these little pings that I'm supposed to, kind of go back and revisit it in a way where I come back with a fresh set of eyes. I can go back, I can read, what younger me went through, give advice to younger me, and then get candid about how I healed from those things now that I had. And so that's what I did. So I sit down and, I'm really praying over it because I really don't want to share these things with the world. Because the book, I talk really, really candidly about feeling responsible for my father's death and about suicidal thoughts, two things I had never openly shared anywhere before. And now I'm going to take these things and I'm just going to let the world read them and then, leave myself open to, whatever judgment comes with that. That was really scary. So, as we do a lot of times, God puts things on our heart. We say, no, thanks, it's too hard. He keeps putting it on our heart. And then, eventually we're like, okay, clearly this is a thing, that I need to do. So it takes me, probably a year of wrestling with, going back and adding, little snippets here and there. By the time it's all said and done, one day I realized like, it's actually a book now. And, God's like, yeah, you need to let people read the book. And I was like, no. And he was like, well, why'd you write it? And I was like, I don't know, because it felt good. Not because I wanted to let the world know that I was a suicidal alcoholic. It wasn't on my to do list for today. And so eventually I give in, I publish the book, and I start talking a lot more about it on my podcast as well. And so the podcast, kind of evolved in the same way. I, started just to tell about mental health. And then God was like, why don't you share about addiction and how you're in AA? And I was like, that's embarrassing. I'm not going to do that. So I ended up sharing about all these things that I felt so embarrassed about. And through doing that, not only did I heal, but I realized there are a lot of other people that have been through what I've been through. And people that would just be like, oh my gosh, yes, my father died and that grief almost killed me as well. And I didn't realize other people felt like that. And I was like, oh, like just so many things, where I was like, oh wow, like there actually is, value in me sharing these things, not only for myself, but for others that, I kind of rejected God in sharing originally. And again, that's another thing that I have to work on. I constantly have to work on giving my life fully over to God's plan because I'm very type A. I want to have, my plan. I want to get things done. And my plan is very often, caught up in worldly things. And, I just really have to continuously turn that over to God every single day.
Wow. Yeah, that's vulnerable. Nothing about what you described is easy, especially since your book started off as your diary.
The trauma healing has actually given us an opportunity to truly share some of the pain that we've gone through that has caused us to be in this place.
I think the use of scripture and truth, along with stories that are relatable, begin to start the dialogue for women to be able to recognize and be able to connect the fact that he is in their circumstances with whatever situation.
With this trauma healing groups, we've been able to see people shed their masks and really just open up and share things that they too didn't even realize. And
the transformation from the participants really included just being able to bring their heart to Jesus.
What's amazing is some of them came with particular hurts or wounds that they wanted to share.
It allowed me to be free with some deep-rooted things that I never spoke and know that it was all right for me to speak them.
Being able to recognize their emotions from the very start.
There was no judgment. It more or less said that this is okay, that this is what's needed.
Just the power from being in the room with other women, recognizing that it's okay to share our hurts. It's good to be able to recognize what is a safe place and to be able to take all of those hurts to the cross.
They realized it's something different that they were there to share. And they found healing in ways that they didn't expect.
But once I got to that place of understanding how this kind of really does work, I had a moment of complete release. In that release, I was able to truly open up, even if it wasn't to anyone but to me and God, but to truly open up about some of the things that I had been suppressing or trying to suppress for years.
Every little bit about it is a soft brush stroke that all combines to make just a really beautiful picture. For them to be able to see the different too and have some of the tools that the Trauma Healing Institute implements are very helpful.
I'm always surprised how God is using this. So it's a good place to be.
I want you to go deeper in your title. It's only embarrassing if you're embarrassed, right? That's the name of the title. How did you land on that, and how did you fully embrace that?
So it was a little saying that I had started saying. So I had two sayings that I had started saying. One was the only pro of only having one parent is you only have one to disappoint, because at that point I was making a lot of bad decisions. And my other was it's only embarrassing if you're embarrassed. And it was my way of trying to take back embarrassment and shame that I was probably projecting onto myself that probably didn't even really exist. And I think a lot of times we like embarrassment is us. We get to decide whether or not we're embarrassed. We get to decide whether or not that moment was embarrassing or shameful. Like we get to decide that. Other people don't get to decide that for us. So here I am going through all these challenging things and I'm embarrassed and I'm ashamed of every single one of them. And that's because of stereotypes that I think other people will project onto me, or that I think that society has projected onto mental illness, or to alcoholism, or to addiction, or to all these different things. And so I'm so embarrassed of all of these different things. And I really, get into that saying, your secrets make you sick. And so in AA, I start embracing that. I just start sharing everything that I need to share, just about all the dumb things I've done when I was drinking or doing drugs, all the bad decisions that I made, and all these things that I thought were going to be so embarrassing and impossible to share. Some of them ended up being like comical stories. And I really realized, like, hold on, like, I get to decide if I'm embarrassed or not. Like, other people don't get to decide that for me. And so I can choose to be embarrassed about my life, about my story, about things that I've been through, about the fact that I'm in AA. I can choose that. Or I can choose to say that those things are a part of my story. Those things don't define me, and those things have made me a better person. And I'm not embarrassed of that. And it took me a really long time to get to that point. And, even now, it's something I have to remind myself of, because, I'm always telling people, hey, you get to decide if you're embarrassed, and then things will happen and I'm really embarrassed. And then I have to remind myself, like, Madison, you get to decide if you're embarrassed by like that random person you're never going to see at Harris Teeter again. Like, why are you letting, that thing or that person have control over your mind? And instead learning to immediately just turn those things over to God. Anything that I notice that's just reoccurring in my mind, hey, God, I give you this thing. Hey, God, I'm really anxious about this. I give this to you. Hey, God, I've been thinking about drinking today. I give this to you. All these things that just come up. Instead of being embarrassed about them, I can use them to share them to help others. And when they come up and I am embarrassed about them or I am triggered by them, I can immediately give them to God.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Let me ask, what have you learned about the expectations of others? Not necessarily like society at large, but those who are closest to you, and that relationship with possibly feeling embarrassed if you disappoint them or don't live up to certain expectations.
Ooh, that's such a good one. I am a recovering people pleaser for sure. Yeah, I was the kind of person I wanted people to like me. I didn't care what I had to do to get you to like me. I didn't care if I had to show up as a version of me that wasn't real because I thought that was what people would like or what a boy would like or what this girl I wanted to be friends with would like, or what my parents thought I should be. I did all of those things. And at the end of the day, I think a lot of it came down to like me just being really insecure and really unsure of myself. And so I remember when I first got into recovery, there's a piece where it talks about how, like, if you don't know who you are, like, recovery can teach you. I was like, great, because I don't know who I am. I know who society wants me to be. I know who my parents would like me to be. I know who, my employer thinks I should show up and be. I know who, my ex husband thought I should be. I knew who all these people wanted me to be, but I didn't know who I was. And that was a great time for faith to intervene because then I could go to God and say, hey, I don't know who I am, but can you make me somebody? Because I would like to be somebody who can, glorify you and who can share your word and who can, do all of these different things. And it took a lot of time and a lot of faith. But again, it's so funny. Every answer, it feels like ties back to just faith in God and just being able to fully give in to Him. But I actually had like kind of two like spiritual awakenings, if you will, that I would love to share. Were just kind of really some key moments where I realized God was like divinely intervening in my life and like showing me I was on the wrong path and that I needed to, get on a different one. I at one point was addicted to alcohol, pills, weed, quite a few different things. So I'm addicted to, probably 3 or 4 different drugs, alcohol at this time. And I, at this point, had started to realize that I had an addiction and that I needed to give God a try. Like I had just kind of like those two little pings. I was struggling with addiction. I needed to give God a try and, actually fully give my life into faith. But at this point, I'm so addicted, I can't. And so one day I'm sitting at a stoplight and there is a homeless woman there. And one thing about me is I love to give to homeless people. That is just like one specific area that speaks to me. I always think we should give. We should, just do things, to help others. And if you see somebody struggling, always try to help them. And so that's one thing that's just always really spoken to me. So there's this homeless woman there. She has a sign that she's a single mom and, she really needs something. And so I'm like, oh, I have this like ping in my heart of like, I need to help this woman. And at the time, I have $90 in my center console that I'm about to use to go buy drugs. And so I'm sitting there like, man, I wish I had something to, give this woman. And it's almost like God like reappeared in my life and was like, give the woman the money in your center console. And I was like, no, that money's for drugs. Thanks for the thought, but I've already decided where that money's going. And so I just keep, it keeps coming back over and over and over again. And I keep being like, first of all, God, I'm not even for sure if I believe in you all the way yet. Like I want to, but I don't know. And now you want me to give this homeless woman my drug money? Like, I don't think so. So I end up giving the woman the money, all of it. And I pull off and I'm pissed now because now I'm like, great God, I got to go buy the ATM again. I got to find a bank, got to get more money to go buy these drugs. Now I'm, behind because I got to go get drugs, alcohol, all these different things, right? And the craziest thing happened, which was about a block later, the desire and the craving for those drugs I was about to spend that money on went away. Like, I can't explain it other than just God told me to give this homeless woman my drug money. I did it, and the addiction for what I was about to spend that money on was gone. Like a block later. And I want to clarify, he didn't rid me of all my addictions. He didn't free me from every single one, but he freed me from two just like that. And that was like a wake up call where I was like, ooh, wait, I have to get my life back on track. And I don't think I can actually do it without God. So that was like just such a one, just like cool moment that I'm like, oh my gosh, God, I can't even believe you did that for me, first of all. And also just like such a reminder that like a lot of times we read the Bible and we're like, God, you used to do so many miracles. How come you're not doing them now? And like he is, we just a lot of times don't put it together, don't see them, or don't give him the glory. So sorry, I went on a little bit of a tangent there, but I just really wanted to share that.
I love that. Yeah, yeah, I think God speaks to us in so many ways. Sometimes we just don't wanna listen. We'll just plug our ears and be like, "No." But I love how you saw that quick response. You sometimes we need to see things right away, and it speaks to our faith. It helps to strengthen our faith. So, yes, sometimes God really speaks to us in a way in which we're kinda like, "Okay, even if I don't wanna hear you, when I do listen to you, I see how the response, the immediate response in this case was for my good in terms of you not having that craving." And so that's pretty powerful. So I'm so glad that you shared that story with us.
So, whenever I probably, let's say 6 months before that incident happened, I was at a point that I had really just been kind of like almost like cursing God on the way to the gym that morning. Like, my life was so in shambles. I was so depressed. I was so anxious. Things were so bad. I was like, God, if you're real, how come you would let this happen to me? How come you let my life end up here? And, I'm just having this like moment of just having so much anger and just using God as the thing I take it out on, at this particular moment. And at this time in my life, I used to go to the gym and run on the treadmill before work in the morning. And I would go every morning and I would watch reruns of the Kardashians and like the extra, scandalous ones where like Scott was like shoving $100 bills down people's throats. Like again, not probably how God wanted me spending my mornings. So I get to the gym after I have this, angry with God session on the way there. And this woman named Joyce Meyer is on TV. And I'm pissed because that's my Kardashian TV. And now I got to watch this woman preacher instead of the Kardashians. And that's not what I came here to do this morning. And so she is just talking about this season that's called the wilderness season in the Bible, where you just it seems like everything is just a test, a trial. It doesn't seem like anything's making sense. Sometimes you feel like you've been there for years, but like everybody goes through these seasons. Everybody has these wilderness seasons, these challenging seasons. And it doesn't mean that God doesn't exist or that He's not there. He doesn't love you. It just means that sometimes you go through really challenging things. And so I end up, watching the whole thing because she's got me hooked in, right? Talking about exactly what I need to hear. And so I leave and I'm like, that was weird. And then all of a sudden she starts like popping up on like my podcast, my Spotify, my everything, like Facebook, Reels. And I start, listening to her. And it was the first time in my adult life that I ever started incorporating faith into my daily life because she actually has a daily podcast where she talks about, just different faith things. And it was like the first moment where I realized I needed to give faith a try. I needed God. And I have a line in my book as well that is God is good even when life isn't. And it was the beginning of me starting to realize that my expectation of God, like that was the problem. I expected to be able to treat God like a genie in a bottle, where I'm like, "Hey, God, my life's in shambles. I made all these problems, but fixed them overnight." And then whenever He didn't, I would be like, what the heck, God?" But it's like that. It's not realistic, and like I just had this such diluted, not realistic, like genie in a bottle version of God that I wanted to exist. And then when it didn't, I was upset with Him, and it was just so quickly revealed to me that like your expectations are not aligned. It's not aligned with the Bible, not aligned with what God says. Like God doesn't ever say we're never going to suffer, we're never going to have trials. He says that we in fact are going to suffer and are going to have trials, but He'll give us the ability to get through those things. He'll give us the strength, the peace, the patience, all the things we need. So that was, you know, really the first moment that I started to let God back in and started to kind of give God a try again. So again, just like two absolutely wild moments in my life that I love to tell people about because I just love to share about how amazing God has just worked in my life and just kind of what some of those things have been. So really two really cool moments for me.
Thank you for sharing them. I love it, Madison. And I wish we had more time, but I would love to hear from you this final question because you wrote in your diary to your younger self. And I want you to think if there was a top lesson or two that you would like to share to the younger Madison or anyone out there who's in a similar situation who's struggling, what would those words of wisdom be for you to share?
It would be that the only thing that can overcome mental illness and addiction is faith. And you can try whatever else you want to try. You might still need to go to therapy, you might still need to take medication, but until you give your mental illness, your depression, your anxiety, your addiction over to God, it's never going to get better. And that is something that took me the longest time to learn. Because, like I said, I tried everything before I tried God. And when I finally did, I was like, look at this, look at God being the solution. And so that is, I actually like wrote like some little notes for just kind of some things I wanted to talk about. And literally the last thing I wrote was faith, God, relationship with God are the only things that can triumph over addiction and mental health. And then like final little note, have you given God a try if like you think you've tried everything else? So that would be the note to younger self and, note to anybody else who's struggling with the same things.
Good stuff, Madison. Where can someone find out more information about you and grab a copy of your book?
Absolutely. So my book is It's Only Embarrassing If You're Embarrassed. It's available on Amazon in the like Kindle ebook as well as a paperback copy. I also have a podcast also called It's Only Embarrassing If You're Embarrassed. And my Instagram is Your Internet Bestie Mads. And there I just share like daily prayers, daily verse of the day. I unpack a little bit of the Bible. So if you want to just learn anything more about just kind of my journey with faith or any of those things, that's where you can follow along.
Good stuff. Thank you, Madison. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
Absolutely. I loved chatting with you and thank you so much for your time.
Yes, yes, yes. And thank you, all of you, for listening into another episode of Faith on the Journey. I hope you were encouraged by it. And remember, it's only embarrassing if you're embarrassed. Now, if you are looking for a Christian counselor to help you to process whatever you might be dealing with, remember to check us out at faithonthejourney.org. Again, that is faithonthejourney.org. Also, if you love this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review. Those reviews help us to get our message out to the world and share with a friend. So that's it for this week, family. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, you stay encouraged and you keep your faith on the journey. I'll see you soon, family.